Hello and welcome to another technical deep dive video on Microsoft Entra. This is going to be an interesting video on verified ID, which is one of the offering out of Microsoft Entra. And before we start discussing and going into the technical demo of verified IDs, I think many of you who have been watching my videos or following me, they already probably know that I have already created a 7 video series for identity access management from Microsoft perspective. And many of the topics or the offerings that is included in Microsoft Entra is already covered in those videos. So for an example, Azure Active Directory, identity governance, which goes around entitlement management, access packages, privileged identity management, other stuff is already covered on those within those 7 videos. So if you have not watched, I would encourage you to go and watch those videos to get acquainted with these two elements. Now, in today's conversation, discussion, and live demo, it would be very hard for me to cover both the features, which is verified ID and permission management, which is a value add by Microsoft Entra, because if I do that, then the video will become too long. So I will only focus in this presentation on verified ID, and stay tuned when I come for the second half of this presentation for permissions management, right? I hope it makes sense. Now, going forward, when we talk about Microsoft Entra here, right, historically, I think as far as I remember, in 2016, Microsoft bought a company called the CloudNox, which was who were the leaders in the area of the cloud permissions management, CPM and SIM, CIE, and cloud permission infrastructure management. And Microsoft branded those offering with the name Microsoft Entra. Then Microsoft used to call it the verified ID, used to call earlier as Azure AD verified credentials. They blended this into Microsoft Entra as well. So as a result, the permission management, which is a cloud permission infrastructure management, and verified ID are two definite value add in Microsoft Entra from identity access management. And it would not be incorrect for me to say that it offers a user-centric secure identity infrastructure. It's a shift from our centralized identity management that all of us have been doing it for quite some time, and to go away from centralized ID management in certain use cases to start thinking about decentralized IDs, right? That is the scope of this presentation, and I hope it makes sense, right? Now, before we dive into the actual technical demo, and I can assure you that this probably would be the first technical video that would actually show you how to deploy and how to test it in your own environment, because most of the other videos that I came across online were around more of a cosmetic part of this, right? They would talk about more in general about how this is working in a use case, right? But not actually the implementation part of it. So hopefully this would cover that implementation part for you guys. And some of the lesson I have learned by my own mistakes, you may not have to do that. And hopefully you would like it. Now, the one of the thing that we need to, I always do in all my technical video, that what is the reason? Why do we need to think and do this, right? That's what's the business case? What's the use case here? So first we need to understand the concept, and concept in my viewpoint is brilliant and fantastic. I thought that we should have thought about it earlier, but better late than better, at least now we are doing it. Now, it's a very simple concept basically of 3 different elements in this decentralized identities, right? One is the user, who is obviously in the center because it's a user-centric solution. And then there is the issuer. The issuer issues a digital identity or a digital virtual card that user can keep it into his digital vault. And we'll discuss about that momentarily and show you what that really means. And then different verifiers, different organizations that trust this issuer can ask for the verification, and the user can present the ID, the digital identity, the digital virtual card, and without doing any password, without doing anything, and the verifier can say, yep, it has got all the required credentials, I pass it, and you are allowed access to whatever data you are trying to consume, right? It's pretty simple thing, and in my viewpoint, this brings the brilliant idea of decentralizing the identity and going away from the sprawl of identities that we all come across, right? From a security mindset, it is a nightmare for identity management and operations, right? All of us know that. And a lot of money, a lot of time is invested by every organization for identity management just because of the one of the biggest security threat to any organization in general comes from identities, right? That's a known fact. So, keeping that in mind, all of us in our day-to-day life have got different services that we use, and as online is so, it has become part and parcel of our life. We try to do all of our business in terms of all of our services online. Whether you are doing your banking, you're doing your electricity bill, water bill, mortgage bill, your e-commerce stuff that you're buying on Amazon or whatever, right? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You have identities all over the places. In managing these identities, definitely becoming a challenge for you as a user, as well as it is a equally daunting task for organization to make sure that their identities, their corporate identities, are not mishandled and misused and abused by somebody. Right? And it is a cycle that we all go through as a security enthusiast or security evangelist. Now, how would it be that we could at least dissect this identity or segregate these identities in a very different way? And that means our corporate identities and the identities we use has never to be compromised, and we can reduce the security blast area or blast radius of our identities by segregating these identities, by decentralizing these identities, having no connection with your corporate identities, right? That's the premise. That's what we are trying to achieve, and I think, um, though it looks easy, but it is a monumental improvement in our overall security posture of an organization. Having said that, looks all good here when I talk more technical terms, but let's see that, do we not use it in a today's world? Do we not all use it in a day-to-day life? We do, right? The only thing is that now we need to see it from a different set of glasses and incorporate the same ideas that we have been using for years. Forget about information technology. For years we have been using it, and use the same mindset, same analogy in our digital world, in our information technology, on our online businesses, right? That's where we are heading to. So just to make it a little bit more easier for anybody, I mean, everybody knows that we are issued a government issued passport by our respective governments. That becomes our identifier, that becomes our identity, and that identity could be verified across the globe by different institutions, whether it's immigration or anything else. Does it not happen today? Has it not been happening for many, many years? So what is so different that we are talking about when we're talking about digital ID? In this case, the passport is owned by the user. And when the user owns that passport, he is not compromising any federal government identities. Does he? No. On the contrary, the other side, the globe, the entire globe is trusting that identity, and you are able to get yourself identified in every corner of the world. Is it not what we do on a daily basis? Right? And this is the same idea that we are trying to bring here with a verifiable ID or decentralized ID. How simple and how cool is that? Take the example of driver license. Same case. Driver license, we have been using it. And we present driver license at many places to prove our identity. Does it not happen? Who owns that driver license? You? Or is it when you're using a driver license, somehow you're compromising your enterprise email identity or government identity? No, you don't. You're just using your proof as your driver license, right? Take another example, because I think concept, to understand the importance of this concept and its business impact is very important before you dive into and start embracing this technology, right? So think about it, like Another example is Best Buy, for an example, decides to give 20% discount to all its vendors. Now, I being Sony employee, I am one of the vendor for Best Buy. Now, how do I verify myself to Best Buy that I am a Sony employee? Should I give my email address? Should I give my corporate ID? Should I give my employment number? I mean, think about it. It becomes massively difficult and complex, and obviously security is involved now. On the contrary, if we would be using this verifiable ID concept, so Sony can issue me a verifiable ID, which is what is trusted by Best Buy. I have that ID. So it is the Best Buy, of when I go and start buying the stuff on Best Buy website, Best Buy presents me a QR code and say, can you verify yourself? I present my VC. Here you go. I get my discount, 20% discount. How cool is that? Is it not already started happening, folks? Some of you might have already been seeing it is happening. So this is the new world that we all live in, and this is the new technology that we are talking about. And I feel personally, and many of you may disagree with me, I feel very fascinated. I feel that, yeah, this is cool. And that's what we're going to do today, right? That's what is exactly what my demo is. And hopefully you would like it. Hopefully you would understand it. Hopefully it will make you as excited as I am about this technology, right? Let's dive into further and start moving and digging further, right? So when we are talking about such a big audience here, right? When we are talking about verifiable ID, decentralized ID, that may have to work across the globe, crossing different geopolitical boundaries. So that means it has to use a open standard that is acceptable to all and everyone. That means we need to follow a transparent standard that our IDs, our decentralized IDs or verifiable IDs can be utilized and commoditized from every part of the globe. And that means we need to follow a standard. And when we talk about Microsoft Entra here, Microsoft Entra is following the different standards, worldwide standards for the decentralized identifiers, right? I have given you the list here. There is a link embedded into this deck. And we're not going to talk of all these standards in this slide. It's impossible. But if you need to know a little bit more, I will put the link to my slide deck in the description. You can go ahead and read more about these different standards, right? Now, how does it actually work? What is the fundamental architecture behind it, right? And I personally feel, again, this is very simple. When we talk about this whole process and whole architecture, obviously, as it is a user-centric solution, user is sitting and requesting a digital identity or virtual card and using an open ID connect, right? That's a protocol that every developer can use. And it will go to Azure Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory would issue a verifiable identity that would be stored in a digital vault. And I used the word digital vault earlier. Now you will see digital vault in this case is Microsoft Authenticator app. Now, once you have that verifiable ID into your Authenticator app, that is a portable one. You could carry it from one site to another application to another data set, right? It is easily doable. You can use this portable credentials, and anything that can use this verifiable identity, you could now present your VC and get verified and get the data that you're going to consume, whether it's a discount, whether it's something else, right? Not a very difficult proposition here. Now, obviously, the trust system is very important. Why should a verifiable industry that is going to verify, how are they going to trust this verifiable ID? There are two different trust systems that Microsoft Entra can adopt. One of them is ION, or Identity Overlay Network, which is a layer 2 open system, basically. Permissionless, tokenless, nothing to do, right? It just follows the Bitcoin chain processes and easy to do it. And Microsoft has given some SDKs around it. If you want to use that, you can do that. At least for my demo, I'm not going to use the ION part of the trust system. The second option is that you use a web-based trust system, which could be your domain reputation from a website that could be used as a trusted system by your verifiers, right? Verifier has to verify that this is originating from the right place. And that's pretty much it as far as the architecture is concerned, right? Microsoft is running these microservices in Azure Kubernetes services, so this is all behind the game. You don't have to even worry about it. And that is why the beauty of it is, because as I said, that it should be user friendly, it should be developer friendly. The code that you developers have to write should not write the whole OpenID code and all the APIs there. So in my viewpoint, Microsoft has simplified it in a great way by creating a service inside Azure that you could see the verified ID there, and it becomes a very intuitive task even for a developer to work on and get this thing going pretty quickly, right? I think this gives you all the insight that I think I wanted to give it to you. Hopefully, it helps you. Hopefully, it excites you, and will be more interested to see the actual implementation through our live demo. And when I go to the demo, there are certain prerequisites that everybody has to understand. Obviously, this is offered through Azure, so we need an Azure tenant. Obviously, we need a contributor rights in the subscription, because we would need to use a key vault for keeping the keys when we create our tenant for the verified identity, right? It's a B2C kind of thing basically. Azure AD global admin rights, because we would need to create a register an application that would be leveraged. Then we need some type of code editor, Visual Studio Code. This particular application that we're going to test in our demo would require .NET 5.0 SDK, and we would be proxying this application from our machine, from our VM or laptop to public through ngrok. And sometimes some of the organizations block ngrok, so make sure that you can run ngrok if you're trying to deploy it and test it. And obviously GitHub, we will be cloning certain GitHub repos here on our machine, so we would need GitHub. And as I said, we will be using a trusted system, the web, HTTPS, so we will need a public site, HTTPS site, to create the tenant, to do all the required work for this demo. And last but not the least, we would need our digital vault in form of a Microsoft Authenticator app that should be running on either Android or iOS, and the versions are here, the minimum version. I hope everybody's version is a higher version than this, so that should not be a problem. With that, let's just dive into the actual lab, my lab, and see how could I make it work for you guys. All right, I am in my lab. I have made it very simple. This is the lab and the demo that I used for many of my videos, and I have created a resource group here, Entra, and we're gonna do this verifiable ID. The first task that we have is to create a verifiable ID tenant, right? In order to create a tenant, we have two prerequisites. One is that we need to have a key vault created, and in key vault we need to give the right permission, the access control, right? That's number one, access policy. We'll see it. And secondly, as I mentioned in my earlier slide there, that the trusted system would be a website, a domain reputation that we will be using, and I have created a demo for this purpose, a website. So I have created a VM, so we're going to look at it. So in order to do this verifiable ID, right, you could pretty much go to your Entra portal, which is very simple, entra.microsoft.com. You can sign in with your ID, with your Azure AD ID, which is what I did. I have a global ID permissions. And the two things that strikes out right here, if I go to the home here, and as long as it works, it's slow for today for me somehow on my network, I don't know what. So you will see there are two different options that is added here, right? So in Azure Active Directory, these you are already familiar with the Azure Active Directory, right? Overview, users, groups, nothing new here. I'm not going to go into dig into, because you guys have been already doing it. So this gives you one common interface. I don't know what Microsoft plan is. Maybe sometime down the road they would ask us to use this portal for all Azure Active Directory management, right? This is your app registration. This is your enterprise application that you guys are familiar. Identity governance, that entity management, privilege identity management, right? External identity. This is what we have already covered in my other 7 videos that I mentioned earlier. The two things that just strikes out right here, which is what I mentioned in my slide deck, is permissions management and verified ID, right? This is the core value add that I mentioned. And we are not going to talk permissions management as we discussed. We're going to work on verified ID. Now, you have two ways to get around it to create a tenant. You can either go from here and create a tenant, right? Or there's another way that you could find the verified. This is what I mentioned earlier in my DAP presentation, that Microsoft has created the service that is running behind, and behind this is all AKS, everything is running behind it in my viewpoint, right? So now you have got verified ID, and it will also take you to the same screen, right? That's where you configure your organization or your tenant, right? Very simple to do that. If I go back here, now there are two important requirements. Basically, we can say 3, right? You need to provide an organization name, which you could choose for our demonstrated purposes. We have AZ Entra. Now, this is where the trusted site comes into picture, right? The trusted system, where you would create a website that is going to be providing as a trusted system. I have already done that, so I'll show you in a second. And then you would need a keyword, right? So this is what is the core requirement. So in order to show you what I have already done here in my tenant, if I go back to the resource groups here, and then I can show you what I did. I actually created a keyword, and I actually created a VM that is hosting my website, right? So if I go to my resource group here, which is just for this demo purposes, I have a VM and I have the keyword already created. So here is the keyword, right? Entra 01. And this is important that you define the right access policy, otherwise it's going to fail. So the user who is going to deploy this tenant, basically the verifiable ID tenant or organization, however you want to call it, he should have the rights in the keyword to access policy, basically to create the keys. But in addition to that, for the cryptographic perspective, he or she should be able to sign it too, right? So this is what I'm just going to show you here. I gave him all permissions because this is my lab, but this is important here, the sign option here for cryptographic option. You could minimize if you don't want to give explicit all rights here. That's up to you which one you want to use it, but for the key management and secret management, this is what we need to do, right? This is already taken care of. There is another VM here that I created, which is this guy, which is a Windows 2016 server, which is running my public website, which would be serving as a trusted system for our verifiable ID organization, right? And I did all the work. I created a certificate, I installed the certificates, I left it to the default website. I didn't do any additional work on that. I'll show you in a second, right? If you see, this is the VM 2016 VM. It's running IIS. This is the public IP. And if I go and try to resolve this, this is where this is resolving to, right? So this is my URL. This is the one domain name that I'm going to use here. And this is my site that is accessible publicly. Good. Now, since we have all the prerequisites met, we can go ahead and create our organization, right? It doesn't stop us to do that. So HTTPS, it has to be HTTPS, as I mentioned earlier, www.azentra excuse me, info. Right, now you need to select keys. Excuse me. All right, so after selecting my keyword, I was able to create the organization. but it is still not verified because the domain reputation is important. So I need to verify it. When I need to click verify here, it will give me a download JSON file, which can I download it, and I need to keep it in this location, right, this path, and then I can run the verify. So basically I need to create a virtual directory which is $_well_known, right? So if I go and I log on to this server here, then I can do this. So I'm going to create a virtual directory first, and then from there I will create this JSON file and upload it. Just want to make sure that I have the right name here. I need to go back to okay, cool. Now I need to get the JSON file here, and I will do it momentarily. So folks, I have copied that, downloaded the JSON file. I have copied over here in my virtual directory. I can just show you here, and we are good to go. Basically verified, right? So initpub is that JSON file. If you want to see this JSON file, you can see this JSON file. That's pretty much it. Right now, since I hope if I have done it right, that means now we should be able to verify it. I already did that. Why is that working? All right, so I verified the DID registration because I copied the .json file. Now I need to make sure that this should be showing here. Now I need to see the domain ownership verify. If I go this one here, this time I need to download that file. I'll download it one more time, though I already downloaded it before, right? So I'll just do it one more time to make sure I don't make a mistake. All right, let's try to verify the domain ownership, and if it does it, then we are good. Our tenant and organization is now created, right? So one task done. Now you would notice by doing this activity, the process has already created and assigned access policies to the verified credential services, and verified credential services request for a user so that they can request it, get signed and signed. When a user start using the verifiable ID, they would make an API call to Azure and get it from the key vault and sign it, right? This is where the trust comes into picture. So this is very important that after we ran that, we created that organization. I didn't do it. This was automatically done by that process. This is what I said. Microsoft has made it simpler and easier for all of us. Not only this, down the road you will also see how the code is going to be easier for us, right? So we are good at this level now. We can move to the next step. All right, next action is to register an Azure AD application that we would be leveraging once we create our application. That would make the required API call to the key vault from the verifiable ID perspective, right? So that is very important task. Let's just go ahead and create a registration here. And since I have this lab working for several years, I might have several apps here. Let's do it. A new registration here. First we create the app, then we will create assign the required permissions for the graph API call, and then we will create a secret for that, right? And we'll record it, and then we're good to go. So this is going to be verifiable. Could be any name, but credential. Verifiable credentials app, accounts in this organizations directly only. This is good. You just register it, and then we'll get the permissions. We're gonna go to the API permissions. And we're going to give API permissions here, and we're going to give the permission in my organization, and we're going to give the permissions to this guy here first. We'll do add permissions. That's why you need a global admin rights, right? And when I presented the DAP to you guys, that's the reason. Alright, we're gonna give one more permission here, and I think we are done with this permission here. What I'm gonna do here is now we need to grant admin consent so that we are good to go. Alright, so now this application is good. One more thing that I need to do is to create a secret that we'll be using down the road in our application, that in the code that we're going to be using soon, and I'm going to call it Entra. I'm going to destroy this in case of 6 months is okay. Now I need to copy this stuff, and let's do this. I have just copied the app ID and app secret that I would be needing in our next step, right? So we are good to go now for our next step. So in this step, we will be creating a new application, downloading the code from the GitHub, creating an application that would do actually precisely both the role. It would allow us to create a verifiable ID, right? That's the first part of this application, so that we can see that how a user can request the verifiable ID and get the verifiable ID and put it into his digital vault, which would be Microsoft Authenticator app. That's the first thing. And then the same application would also allow us to verify it. So it's in our demo here, it's doing both the purposes. It is doing the purposes of issuer as well as a verifier here, right? So this is going to be interesting. So we're going to work on it now. And now we're going to try to create a verified credential expert card in our Azure, right? That's what we're gonna do with next step. So we're gonna create a new credentials here, and we have a JSON file that Microsoft has provided us. We're just gonna copy and paste it here, a custom credentials here. And I'm gonna copy it and bring it over here. And we can name the expert card here. The file I just copied from Microsoft side, the display notification definition. I'm gonna copy the rules definition here too, and then we are on our way. And I have copied the rule. Now we see this is how the users are gonna see their virtual card or digital identity in their phone. We're gonna check it in few minutes, right? And then we're gonna just create here. And that should create right here, right? So this is our trusted verified domain, which we have already verified the ownership here on this domain, so we are good to go. Many of you who uses Office 365, they know all this drill, verifying the domain and ownership here, right? It is very important that anybody can do that, and unless you have the ownership right on this domain. Now we're gonna go to the next. So we're gonna get the credentials details to be used to create a verifiable ID or request a verifiable ID by a user, right? Remember that this is important. I think when I was mentioning earlier, I was reviewing my own video. It looked like that it is the issuer which initiate the process. No, that's not true. Actually, it is the user who would request for the verifiable ID. So the process flow is always starting from user, because it's a user-centric solution, right? So user would prompt it. It does not mean that as an enterprise IAM administrator or global administrator, we will have to create these IDs or verifiable ID. It is going to be requested by the user, and user is going to be creating their digitally verified ID or virtual card in their wallet, right? It is very important to understand, right? So now we are in the verified credential expert that we created. Now we're going to issue the credential, right? This is where the users would be able to create their verifiable ID after that. Now this is the credentials that we need to capture, and this is very important that this information we keep it safe and secure. I'm just gonna not modify anything here. I'm gonna download the request body here, and if it gives me the option, I'll save it so that when I use it, I can use it in my JSON file, right? This is my request file. I'm just gonna keep it here. That's my one step, which is easy. All right, so we're gonna download the application that we're gonna run on my VM. Then we will publish it through ngrok outside and see whether we can get this thing going. As I mentioned, we're gonna use the Git application here, GitHub application. I'm gonna use the CMD here and clone the repo from the GitHub repository for this application, and then modify the code in the Visual Studio Code, and hopefully we'll be able to create the required application. All right, so now I have the code downloaded. Now we need to work on modifying this code to our requirements. There is one important thing that we need to keep in mind, because I ran into this issue. I'm not a developer, so I don't know all the details, but I was getting issue when I was trying to compile the code with the NuGet with web identity missing, and the catch was that you need to modify. Let me bring it here. You need to modify this NuGet config file to make sure that you have this line added into there. Let me just say open with, I'm just going to choose Notepad here. Come on. So make sure that you add this line into your new.config file, otherwise you may run into the web identity missing package issue here, right? So I struggle with this, just to share with you. I don't know whether you have already covered it, but I just thought I should mention it here. Now I'm gonna try to modify that code or update that code. I have opened the Visual Studio. I'm not a developer or I don't know how to run the code. I struggled with this, but I was able to figure it out. So hopefully I should be able to do it again. And I think this is the folder where I have my JSON file that I need to modify. ID token hint. And this is the app setting JSON file that we need to update with our information, right? Especially this section here. Right, so tenant ID, we can see where the tenant ID is, client ID, we just, the application that we registered in Azure Active Directory, secret you do know, certificate we are not using it, so I can modify it because we are using a secret, but that's an option. If you want to do that down the road, you could definitely do that. Alright, so let's see where the tenant ID is, guys. And tenant ID means here is our Entra organization that we created, the tenant we created. We have multiple places to look at it. Actually, the JSON file that we downloaded should also have it here. I think, where is that file? Hold on one second. It should be in that folder. Right, this is the JSON file, request file that we saw. We can open it. And we can leverage this. You should see this is the tenant ID right here. You could copy from here and we can paste it here in the tenant ID. Now you can also see this tenant ID if you go on your organization properties there too. Right, so if you see the organization setting here, here is your ID and here is your DID identifier, which is also we're going to use in our application that we are going to use, right? So if I copy it here, or you can also see in the notepad here, the JSON file that we requested, authority is this, DID authority, right? So we need to copy it. We need to go to our Visual Studio Code and where is my issue authority? This is good, and that's our verifying authority here. Now, in this case, we are doing it both in the same application, right? Remember that, right? Because we are using the same application for both the purposes, for issuing the verifiable ID and verifying here too. But in a real world scenario, this would be slightly different, right? Now, we also have to have the client ID that we copied earlier. But before I do that, let me copy the manifest URL here. And then we can take care of the application ID. Alright, so that's good. The only thing missing is our tenant, the client ID and client secret, which we captured and we documented somewhere here. Not here. That was in a notepad plus here. Right, so this is our app ID here. This is the which is going to make the API call to Azure, right? And we need a secret for that. This is where we gave the permissions as a global admin to this app that we created in Azure Active Directory. Making things easier, guys. That's what I said, that Microsoft has done simplified this complex. Otherwise, it could have been complex. Right? I think we have everything here captured. Now we need to run this code and hopefully this works, right? So let's execute, let's run the task. Run the project here. So the program is running, application is being created as I speak to you. So far, no issues right now. I think we are good now. So Alright, it appears that the project has run successfully and has actually published the application. I can see it here. Now we need to publish this or proxy this application over the public through ngrok. And in order to run it, we would run the command for ngrok to publish this application to public. But before we do that, we need to make sure that we run this command to get the token of the user logged into this machine. And once we have done, I have already executed this command, then we can publish this application to the internet through ngrok, right? So that's our next task. Let's execute. I have downloaded ngrok in a folder, so let me get to that folder. And execute the command now. Alright, so I can hit my site here, and if I click visit site, I should be able to create a verifiable credentials for this particular user. We are using a Microsoft have provided from the GitHub. The username is Maggie Brown, and unfortunately I would not be able to show you my phone. Capture the picture from my phone and will show you the verifiable ID through my phone pictures. And as I said, we'll see both sides of this application. One is the user can get credentials. At the same time, this can also verify credentials. This is what I mentioned earlier. So we're going to try to get the credentials. It should give us a QR code that we can open it on Microsoft Authenticator app, and then it would let us download the virtual card or the ID, the digital ID. Alright, so let's do that. And here's the QR code that I'm gonna open my camera. There is a pin 1781. Once I do that, I would need to type the pin, and I should be able to get this verified credentials downloaded to my system, right? So let me try to do it again, though I already did that, but now I would not go with this phone capturing here. I am scanning the QR code on my phone camera, and it is going to open my authenticator app now. Authenticator is asking me for my fingerprints to authenticate. Now it needs the pin code that is on top. Unless I type it, I would not be verified. One. And now I can add this ID to my phone or my digital wallet. So um, now I have been able to get the verified ID downloaded to my phone, and now I can use this ID to be able to access the application, same application, right? So let me try to show you the picture of this verified credentials in a second. And here is the verified ID that I was able to download here from my verified credential expert credential issuer that we created, and that gives me a picture of and proves it that I was able to download this verified credential. And here is the detail, as I mentioned earlier, about this verified credentials. It's all the detail that it will be passing to the verifier, the application that it is there, so that the verifier can verify this identity and allow access to the application, right? So now you may also see here that credentials were successfully issued, right? This is a proof here. Now we're going to try to verify this. So the first part is done, and as I mentioned earlier, it is the user who initiates the request for the verifiable IDs, right? Not the other way around, not the administrator is issuing it. So this is a huge difference in IAM management operations, right? So that's pretty significant in my. Now we're going to try the second part of this application to verify credentials and see what happens. It should present us a QR code. Right, so here you see, so we can see that a verified credential export on this time we share it, right? So this proves the whole point that what I promised you to show you in this presentation. This concludes this presentation. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys understand the value proposition behind it, and please provide me your valuable feedback, because that is what is my motivator to keep creating these videos. It takes a lot of time and patience to create these videos, so I appreciate your feedback. It doesn't really matter whether it's positive or negative. I learn from your comments, and I appreciate that. Once again, thank you again for your valuable time. Have a great evening or great day, wherever and whichever part of the world you are, and have fun. Thank you. Bye bye.